The support class in BattleBit Remastered is without question one of the least played classes in the game right now. And look, that may be because it doesn't appease to our smooth brain gotta go fast mentalities, or, if I may be ever so controversial here, maybe it's because of the weapon it starts with. G'day there once again viewers, your mate Kamikaze78 here, and today we're going to be doing a weapon review for the L86 light support weapon. So folks, I know that intro may sound like we're being a bit harsh on the old L86A1 here, and truth be told, I am. But there's some good reasons for said harshness that I think y'all will understand in a few moments here. For those who are new to our weapon reviews here on the channel, here's the breakdown as to what it's going to look like. We're going to start off with a breakdown of the L86A1's stats and performance metrics, basically going over the numbers and the backbone that make the L86A1 what it is. We'll then get into some weapon specific tips and tricks for using the weapon to the best of its ability and making sure you aren't stretching it too thin in combat. And then to wrap things up, we'll have a discussion around the attachment options available to the L86A1 so you can best optimize the weapon to use it in combat. So let's go ahead and jump straight on into our review of the L86A1 here today. Starting off with the damage profile here, and we actually get kicked off on the right foot here. The L86A1 sports a maximum damage of 32 per shot to 101 meters, dropping off to a minimum damage of 9.60 at 299 meters, which gives us a couple of very interesting talking points to consider here. For one, the maximum damage of 32 gives us an incredibly consistent bullet to kill spread across the game's different armors, sitting at 4 shots across the board until some cheeky devil with heavy or exo armors enters the match. But what's even more impressive is the range in which this damage occurs. The damage drop off on the L86 doesn't actually kick off until you hit 101 meters. And let me tell you, given the weapon's recoil pattern, it's very unlikely you'll ever see yourself engaging beyond that distance anyway. More on that in a second. But again, what that does is it makes this weapon incredibly consistent from a damage perspective. Now, of course, that consistency of the damage payload only gets better when we start to throw headshots into the equation here as well. A 48 damage shot in CQC translates to a 3 bullet to kill threshold against all helmet types in the game here, with the exception of exo armor. And again, that's going to make the L86 feel incredibly dependable, assuming you can land the headshots. Unlike the MP7 that we just reviewed, this is going to be a weapon that heavily rewards good aim and knowing how to place your shots on a headshot. Combine this with the weapon's 775 rounds per minute or 12.91 rounds per second fire rate, and we are welcomed with an absolute cannon that actually puts some of the starting assault rifles to shame. For comparison's sake, the M4A1 sports a 30 damage maximum to 52 meters on a 700 rounds per minute fire rate. So clearly, the L86A1 is winning by a long shot in the damage department. Speaking of, let's quantify just how much of a cannon this thing actually is with some time to kill stats. And as always, I like to put this little disclaimer here to keep some perspectives in check. All time to kill measurements that we go into in these reviews are theoretical in nature. They assume that all bullets hit the chest or the head area of a target with no mixing and matching in between, with 100% accuracy, and with no bullet travel time coming into the equation. It is an incredibly theoretical stat that mainly serves to give us an indication as to what a weapon's best case scenario looks like against some of the other weapons in the game. Obviously, the longer the range extends out as well, the less likely these numbers are to be accurate. But the L86A1 with body shots sees itself sitting anywhere between 232 milliseconds to 774 milliseconds time to kill when dealing with an unarmored target, which then fully extends out to a 1.239 second time to kill if you see yourself engaging an exo armor wearer at the weapon's minimum damage range. Given that this is 300 meters though, well, good luck with that. You're not going to hit that time to kill any day of the week. But once again, we can peel our eyes to the best case time to kill of the weapon across all armor classes, and we can see just how consistent the weapon is here. It's not necessarily breaking any records in the time to kill department, that pleasure still falls to the likes of the SMGs in the game, but it's not performing badly either, right in the sweet spot if you will. And we have to remember that those best case scenario time to kills will occur all the way out to 100 meters if you're accurate enough. That's not something to scoff at here. To To sweeten the deal, the headshot damage also comes into play here in a very, very nice way, bringing that effective time to kill down to a very smooth 155 milliseconds against all targets who once again aren't running exo armor helmets. So yeah, the weapon is extremely efficient at blasting away enemy combat medics in particular. With a muzzle velocity of 600 meters per second as well, we aren't exactly sacrificing much here for such time to kill. So it begs the question, where's the catch? Well, when we get to the handling of the L86A1, we are greeted by some skeletons in the closet that take this weapon from being a dream come true to kind of a handful to handle. Handling wise, we are dealing with a 1.40 recoil value on both the horizontal and vertical side of things, which collectively makes this an unruly beast to tame. While yes, this is a slightly lower vertical recoil by comparison to some of the assault rifles that we've already looked at, it is by far the weapon with the heaviest horizontal kick that we've looked at. And man, you can really feel it with the L86A1. And the weapon's amped rate of fire, which is one of those juicy factors that makes its damage payload so appealing, actually exacerbates the presence of the recoil as well, by making the recoil just occur more often. I'm sure you guys have all seen that video doing the rounds on the internet at the moment, you know, where the jackrabbit is just absolutely laying into its keeper, trying to tend to its mate. Yeah, just imagine that little shit in your face, punching you while also roided up. That's what the L86 feels like to fire. So in the hands of an unskilled shooter, this is actually a weapon that can quickly get out of hand to handle. So keep that in mind for a few moments here. Thankfully, we aren't being further punished by an amplified first shot multiplier, and the cone of fire accuracy isn't the worst that I've seen here either, which again helps to make the weapon feel just that little bit more consistent when it comes to landing your shots while you wrestle with the recoil. But unfortunately, the L86A1 isn't winning any more favors here as we keep moving down the graphic. Sporting a 4.03 second reload time, it's not the worst reload time in the game, but it sure as shit ain't winning any races at all, especially when you factor into the consideration that it only has a 30 round magazine by default. And that little caveat about the magazine size should also make the likes of the TAC reload and the long reload look very unappealing as well. A 3.30 second and 5.93 second reload time respectively for a 30 round mag is very underwhelming, and enough to really pump this weapon down the order as far as sustainability is concerned. Especially, and this is what really gets me the most about the L86A1 here, especially given that it sports a whopping 300 millisecond aim down sights time by default and a run speed of 0.95 times. These are stats that would indicate that you're holding a heftier weapon by default, right? And I think it would all make sense if that were the case. But again, we're dealing with a 30 round magazine here, so effectively, the L86A1 here is, as it's currently balanced, just a slightly heavier hitting assault rifle that moves slightly slower for, despite my best efforts to find evidence that points to the contrary, for absolutely no reason whatsoever. And that is the L86A1 in a nutshell when you look at all of its stats from the ground up. And look, when you look at the weapon in complete and total isolation, it looks like a solid weapon on paper. Very solid damage output, paired with a pretty brutal recoil pattern to create this sort of skill-driven weapon for the support class. And in isolation, I can agree to it having its place in the game. But here's the problem, folks. Despite its cracking damage output, we are left here with a weapon that sacrifices a lot in the handling and mobility department to allow this to happen for what feels like no reason at all. It moves slower and takes longer on average to reload compared to most assault rifles in the game, while having no inbuilt magazine capacity buffs to compensate for said downsides, which effectively makes it a clumsier, slower to move assault rifle that you'd be better off using on any other class. And all of this is again sitting on a class that is typically designed to be the bulwark of defense, the class that is designed to have the best uptime from a sheer tankiness perspective and from a firepower over time perspective. The L86A1 in its current form doesn't mesh to the archetype of the support class as a whole, so as a result, it just doesn't bring much to the party that makes it worthwhile using in that context. Sure, you can mount a 55 round drum mag on the weapon, but that then only goes to exacerbate the already intense recoil pattern, which creates additional problems here, and further, it makes your reload speed and your mobility speed worse again. So if you look at the weapon in total isolation, as I said before, and pretend like there are no other weapons in the game to use, then 100%, it's solid. But as soon as another assault rifle enters the conversation, I have to be honest, any reason to use the L86A1 kinda disappears out the window. And I think many players are picking up on that and reserving their use for the support class until they get access to the M249 at rank 20. But let's say you are hell-bent on using the L86A1 in combat. The first tip that I've got for you is simple. Yes, you are playing as a support, yes, you'll be tanky, but you should be using the L86 like a big assault rifle. Understand that you will not have the ammo to take on multiple targets in quick succession, and that a lengthy reload is waiting for you at the end of a very short magazine. Be methodical in your approach here, ensure that you have a spot to fall back to, and really pace yourself. It feels weird to do so on the support class, and it sure as hell took a lot of time for me to get used to, but that is the biggest hurdle you'll probably face when it comes to overcoming this gun. I also found that you have to play a much more passive playstyle when running the L86A1. It's weird, yeah, the recoil kick of the weapon makes it pretty difficult to operate outside of, the sorta CQC to medium range, but the mobility of the weapon puts you in struggle street as soon as you move into a more offensive playstyle to close that distance. So one of the better ways you can make the L86 come into its own is by simply letting enemies come to you. It's going to require patience, being sure that you take a step back, hold a position, and become just such a pest that enemies start to push you and your position. That's sort of the way the L86 will start to perform at the ranges in which it is intended to, and from there, the kills will start piling up. But alright, let's just say you're hellbent on using the L86 in combat. Let's move on to some attachment options here today. Obviously, there's some problem areas to work on, at least the best we can, and I've got two builds here today that will, at the very least, do their best to address those issues. But I'm afraid there's not going to be a catch-all here. My first attachment build aims to take the L86A1 and sort of leans into that slower assault rifle persona that it has going for it originally, right? You'll see we are rocking the quick aim magazine here, which keeps the 30-round magazine around. So we really aren't improving the uptime per se, but instead improving the downtime and the ability for you to chain kills between reloads. As we try to tame the recoil a little bit more here as well, we're rocking a flash hider and a vertical grip combo. The flash hider greatly reduces the horizontal kick, but also completely throws the vertical recoil out of whack on the gun, so the vertical recoil here helps to mitigate this slightly. With the combination of these two attachments, yes, ultimately you are left with a stronger vertical kick than what was on the gun by default, but an improved horizontal recoil kick by a significant margin, which in my eyes is the best case scenario for this kind of gun. It's way easier to compensate for vertical recoil than it is for horizontal recoil. I'd say the build gives you a tad more effective range as a result, but it's still far from perfect and will still force you to really burst fire if needed. Build 2 for the day here really keeps the weapon pressed into the CQC domain here. As you can see here, we're rocking the drum AMAG on this build, which really lets the weapon play a little bit more into the support class's role of being a crowd control expert. The only problem with that, however, is that the drum AMAG has a vicious impact on the gun's recoil, and running the old combination of grip and muzzle attachments just does not work here. As a result here, I would recommend taking the tactical muzzle and the SE5 grip combination here. This leaves the horizontal recoil feeling unruly as ever, unfortunately, but the vertical recoil is a bit nicer to you. This effectively gives the weapon a closer effective range thanks to the weapon's shakiness, but the bigger magazine is a lot of fun to mess around with as you chain kills together with that blistering time to kill. Again, it doesn't feel like the smoothest weapon to use out there, but it's something, I guess, and is a good interim until you get the M249. But folks, that is everything I've got for the L86A1 here today in this review. Obviously, it's not the best gun in the game right now, and I'd like to see some further balancing done to it to improve its position in the game. I'm feeling like a 40-round baked-in magazine would go a long way to making the gun's, deficits feel more worthwhile taking up by comparison to the assault rifles in the game, but that's just me. Let me know in the comment section down below what your thoughts are on the L86A1. Do you think it's in a good spot, or do you think it also needs a little bit of love? Would love to hear your thoughts down below. If you enjoyed the video, backhand the like button and subscribe to the channel. A lot of love has been coming through on the channel lately, and I really appreciate you guys' support of the BattleBit content. There's a lot more coming, so being subscribed will keep you up to date. Once again, guys, I hope you enjoyed today's video. Peace out, and I will see you guys all in the next one. Take care, guys. Have a good one.